beautiful bookish friends, and welcome back to my channel. As you can see, since the last time we sat down and talked books, I have done some reorganizing, some shifting of some collectibles, and now have almost all but like maybe 20 of my books on my shelves, which is awesome. It looks so much more organized, and I love the way it looks like right now talking to you guys. Like, just there's so much more books, and you know exactly what I'm here to talk about because they're all around me. That being said, I am here for my December wrap up. It's post Christmas. The craziness of, you know, the Christmas holiday has subsided for me, so I can talk about what I have read. So let's start with the first book of December, which was a reread for me, and that was Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. I tabbed up this book, and actually I'm really glad I reread this book because the first time I read it, I gave it 3 stars. I just wasn't thrilled with it. I didn't find it as engaging as the other books, but this time around, I really liked it. I actually gave it 4 stars instead of 3 stars, and I found a lot more points in it that were a little bit deeper than the other books in this series. I mean, obviously they're romances, but this one tackles a lot of different issues with addiction, being a blended family, and you know how that takes a toll on children, and how that takes a toll on the adult coming into the situation, but also the adult who like started off in the situation. So really good book. It's a nice wrap up to this little series. There is an epilogue. I still didn't love the end. Like I said, I just felt like the main character changed too much in this series. So some of that still rubbed me the wrong way. Like, it just felt really quick, the way she kind of just left all of the parts of herself behind. But yeah, still 4 stars, still a solid romance, and I still love Tessa Bailey's writing. So the next book I listened to on audio, which I do recommend if you want like a more spooky experience with it, depending on what affects you when it comes to like thriller and horror. For me, if I listen to it, it's a lot more spooky to me than if I read it on the page, and that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I've never read any Riley Sager. I know you're technically kind of supposed to read his stuff in order. Not that it's a series, but it's just, I guess, the experience people say is a lot better that way because you kind of see his writing grow. However, I started with this one and I really, really liked this book and am going to look into reading more Riley Sager. This one is all about the girl she is convinced that her dad basically just made up this whole story about a haunted house that they lived in when she was a kid that essentially just made her the girl from that book. And that her parents portrayed her in this really terrible light and this really whiny way. But then we find out throughout the book that everyone's perceptions, hers, her parents, all the people involved when she comes back to this house to be its caretaker after her dad has died, are wrong. All the perceptions are wrong. So this is probably one of the best thrillers I've read recently. It's borderline a domestic thriller, but we have lots of suspects, lots of twists and turns. We have ghosts. There's paranormal elements all throughout this. But it's a nice mix between Amityville horror and I'm trying to think of another movie that would kind of go with it, but I can't think of one. But I read The Widow's House before. It had some elements there that I kind of liked of the house being haunted, and some of the twists were similar. And I really liked that book, so I really liked this one as well. And I gave it, I believe, 4 stars. And also, you not only get her account of what's happening presently, but then in between chapters, you get chapters from the book that her dad wrote, because she's actually never read it, and now she's reading it again as an adult. And you kind of see how her perception of the events changes. But this book is wonderfully spooky. I think it's a great winter read, even though it doesn't take place in the winter. I just feel like all thrillers are good in the winter because they're dark and mysterious, and winter can kind of be dark and gloomy. So yeah, I will definitely probably reread this one at some point, just physically, because it's just pure entertainment to me. So then I started rereading Legendary by Stephanie Garber, and I haven't finished it. I'm only on page 31. I feel like I just got distracted by like wanting to read Christmas books, and this one just really isn't Christmassy at all. But I am annotating it, and I'm gonna finish it by the end of the month. This is the only book that I am currently reading, so I want to finish this one up, and it takes a little longer when you're annotating, but it is a reread, so if I don't finish it by the end of the month, not a huge deal, but I will finish it within the next like month and a half or so. Then I decided to finally try and finish Norse Myths and Tales, and I just could not. I got to page like 168, and that was only because I ended up finding Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology, which is a much more like layman's terms version than this one. This is a pretty like dense version of everything, as you can see, but a lot of the stories are the same, so I would kind of find them, like I was listening to the Neil Gaiman book, would go in here, find where that was, and then mark it off as like read. Then I read what was in between, and then I go to the basically find the next part that was in the audiobook and mark that as read, and so on and so forth. I got to the Sigmund sagas and just stopped because I just really was not looking to waste my time trying to finish this. I'm gonna hold on to it because I do like it and I think it has something to teach me in it, but it's so dense, I just could not get through it this month, and I didn't want to go into a slump with it being the last reading month of the year. Then I listened to the tourist attraction on my Libby, I think is where I found it, so I borrowed it from the library. I thought this would be a really cute kind of, it's not Christmas centered, but it's just winter centered in Alaska, and it's all about this girl who goes to, with her very rich friend, to Alaska, to this small town that her friend always goes back to every year, and basically just goes to live this dream that she's had of going to Alaska. And it was okay. It's pitched as this grumpy sunshine trope. You know, I think Grant is the main guy. He doesn't want tourists in his town, so he has this little restaurant where he's like actually mean to people on purpose, and then that kind of backfires where people start coming there because of it. So that's what he does, and she's an assistant, I think, of some sort. I don't remember what she does, and I can't remember her name either. However, they just basically have this romance. They go on adventures. She gets, like, there's always these mishappenings happening on the adventures. Editing me here. Yeah, she's not an assistant. She's a waitress at a truck stop, and I literally did not click in my brain till right now. Also, I forgot to mention she has a really cute relationship with her grandmother, which comes to play in the second book, and basically I just forgot everything about these two books that I listened to completely and utterly just boop, gone out of my memory. So yeah, they weren't great. Probably won't reread them. So on and so forth. He has a dog. It's very Hallmarky. The ending was just very predictable. I gave it a 3-star. I thought it was okay. I didn't, like, it was grumpy sunshine, but he's only sunshine for her. But that quickly became him just being sunshine all the time. Like, I didn't feel he was grumpy enough to other people. And this book is a series, so I thought I would give Mistletoe and Mr. Right a chance, which is the second book in the series, and I think I gave this one 2 stars. I would probably say, now that I've sat with it for a while, it's definitely a 2-star, because I just couldn't make myself care, if that makes sense. I mean, it was a good book, but I can't tell you how it ended. I'm sure she ended up with him. Me again. So, I remembered things about this book. Basically, the rich girl buys this town. Like, the whole town. She buys everything. She buys the big resort. She buys all these little businesses. And she's basically trying to save the town from being overrun by tourists and, like, just becoming really chain restaurant-y kind of thing. She wants to keep it, like, the way it is. And she gets involved with a guy who runs the pool hall, who is divorced and taking care of his, like, teenage nephew because his wife just, like, skipped town after her, like, whole family except her nephew dies. So, effectively abandoning them both. Yeah, and they end up together. That's how it goes. But basically it's just her trying to win over the townspeople and them just not trusting her because she's not from there. And yeah, so I remember part of that book. That's all I can tell you. We have my Reread Fable. I already read this one this year, but I wanted to read the second book in the series. So I re-listened to this on audio, and I loved it even more the second time. This was one of my favorite books of the year. 5 out of 5 star read. It's by Adrienne Young, one of my favorite authors ever. And it's a wonderful pirate book, but it goes so much deeper than that. It goes into, you know, parental relationships and her really fighting her way to get what she wants, and she's going to do it without anybody's help if she has to. And she's very reluctant to take help from people. But we have a great love story in here that I kind of missed the first time. Like, I knew it was going to happen, but I missed the little, like, markers throughout the story where it was happening. And then this time I really picked up on it. So I highly recommend, like, either reading it physically, or if you're going to listen to it, like, reading along with the book. I think that'll be helpful. I listened to it much slower this time and really just absorbed it. So good. 5 out of 5. I love a good pirate book. And then after I read that, immediately after, I listened to Namesake, which is the second book. So when you put together, you kind of see how Fable changes. Because this is Fable on the front too. This time we learn a lot about her history. We learn more about her mom. We learn how she can do the things she does. You meet her grandma. And again, she goes on this crazy adventure, but not to save herself, which is what she does in this book, but to save the people that she now cares about for the first time in her life. This one leaves on a cliffhanger, and this one pops up right where it left off. So if you like books that do that, where there's no in between, this is the perfect duology. And again, it's a duology, not a series. So you get the wrap up right here. And Adrienne Young is great at writing duologies. I have Sky in the Deep and The Girl the Sea Gave Back. That's a duology. So this is another one that's just awesome. And I gave this one 4 stars, I think. There were just a few things that didn't like interest me, like certain pacing parts. But yeah, overall, these 2 books are incredible, amazing, and I will continue to reread them. Then I listened to We Met in December. This is all about a girl who moves to London, and she is in a flat share. Or no, not a flat share. She lives in a house with her friend who inherited the house. And basically, like, she doesn't believe in people having to pay rent for housing, so she gives her, like, dirt cheap rent. And there's, like, 5 of them that live in this huge house. And it's all about her falling in love with one of her roommates. However, the whole time there's this big, like, miscommunication of him being involved with another girl in the house, which, I mean, he is, and her kind of going out and finding other people to date, and then them having this, like, weird friendship, flirtationship kind of situation. It was okay. I mean, I don't think it's that much different from One Day in December. It felt very similar to that, just removing the aspect of One Day in December being over the course of 10 years. This one's only over a year, and obviously not involving that sister situation that goes on in One Day in December. So obviously the titles are very similar, but based on plots, it would be very easy to mix them up. And honestly, We Met in December, I gave like 3 stars. Actually, it's probably closer to a 2, just because I finished it on Christmas Eve, and I don't remember a whole lot of it other than the reason they broke up because they never worked together, and the reason they got together, and it was just all miscommunication and misunderstanding, which just isn't one of the most original and exciting tropes that I enjoy. I actually kind of hate it because I think you could, you know, explore a lot deeper realms when it comes to that stuff. And then I am finishing, like, I have one more chapter left, The Matzo Ball, which is a Hanukkah romance, and I've never read a Hanukkah romance, and it's an Own Voices book, and it deals a lot with chronic illness. It actually deals with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I love the representation in this book. The way that she talks about the main character not being able to get out of bed some days, and that can be a day, that can be 3 days, that can be weeks on end, and then other days she's fine. But the whole premise of it is that she is Jewish and her dad is a very famous rabbi. However, she is a best-selling Christmas romance author and has like over 20 books, Hallmark movies, kids movies, just all kinds of Christmas everywhere, and she loves Christmas even though she's very involved in her Jewish community. And just shows how she learns how Hanukkah can be really magical. It just depends on how you embrace the holiday, even though it's not the most important Jewish holiday, which I learned when I was in New York. Like, Hanukkah is like third on the list of holidays and like importance level. Like Yom Kippur is much more important. But it talks about going to Shabbos and the relationship with her parents and like Jewish culture. And it's not stereotyped. It's just this really sweet story, and her meeting with this guy that she thought was like her mortal enemy, but turns out he's like been in love with her forever, which we love that kind of trope in this house. So it's a great book, and I'm definitely going to give it probably 4 stars when it's all said and done. I just think it's a really cute holiday book and kind of kept me out of slumping. So when I'm done with listening to that on audio, I will be finishing Legendary. I'm making that promise to myself now. But that is it for me with the December wrap up. Make sure you guys check out my 2021 reading wrap up. It's already on my channel. It'll have all of my book stats as of December 14th. Now, obviously those have changed since doing this video, but it's pretty close. So I will see you guys in the next one, and get ready because my January TBR I'm filming right after this. So you'll see this look again, but yeah, I am ready for reading in 2022. I'm ready to knock out as many books on this shelf as I possibly can, and maybe even reread some of the ones on this side. So I will see you guys in the next one, and happy reading.